Assalamu alaikum. Dear students and professionals, welcome to DG Academy. We are starting our new training program focus on Active Directory, Microsoft Active Directory and Open LDAP. So the question is, why did we merge both of these topics? Because they are talking or they are delivering the same thing. The concept we will be learning in Microsoft Active Directory, the same concepts are applying on Open LDAP. Fundamentally, Active Directory is also an implementation of LDAP. What is LDAP? What is Active Directory? What is Open LDAP? What are the differences? What exactly we do in the service? What exactly directory services are performing? What are the activities directory services are performing? Once we say Active Directory, it is a service. It is a service, infrastructure service. So what does it mean? You know, in our student life, we really don't care. We just see, okay, Active Directory is for, it is a central repository where we go and we log in, open the management console and create our accounts and create groups. That's it. This is the fundamental knowledge usually students and professionals have. But in reality, Active Directory is huge. It is huge. It is very crucial, very critical component of our infrastructure. Nothing will work if this service goes down. The whole infrastructure will face catastrophic disaster, which where nothing will work. You will not be able to log in. What does it mean? We have three kind of users. Number one, the user, the actual user who is using the service. Let's say if you want to access the email service, you actually log in to your email service with the help of username and password. Another kind of user, they are the administrators. These guys, they administer our infrastructure, our data center, our servers, our workstations. There are third kind of users, those who are the operation centers, SOC and NOC, network operation center and database and security operation center users. So none of them will be able to log into the system because without the system, they are not able to see, they are not able to manage, they are not able to use the network resources. So what is it? Which critical component is actually managing all these three kind of users? This is what Active Directory, this is what LDAP. And Microsoft version of implementation of LDAP is called Microsoft Active Directory. And open source version of LDAP is called Open LDAP. We'll go deep dive what we have done. We have structured the whole course and we have created 10 lessons. And you know that whatever we start, we create in the way, we create the component in the way that it can fulfill the knowledge from foundation, taking you to the intermediate, taking to the advanced level. So this course is part of our essential series, and this course fall under infrastructure resources, infrastructure courses. So this course is designed in a way we will have 10 lessons starting with introduction to directory services, overview of Microsoft Active Directory components, installing Active Directory, overview of Open LDAP components, installing Open LDAP, comparing Active Directory and Open LDAP, management and administration of both of them, security features and integration with other services. Believe me, as I told you as an introduction, that this is very critical service. There are some services in the whole infrastructure. If you are managing the whole data center from architecture point of view, you can rate, okay, this service is critical, this service is not critical, this service is active, this service is passive. What does it mean? If it is active, it is crucial, it is critical. It means without the service, nothing will work. The one of these services is called directory services. So now you should be very alert, very interactive, and also you should be very conscious about, okay, now we are learning something which is very critical. Before we used to take it very easy. Now we understand the importance of directory services. So this course is designed to provide principles with comprehensive understanding of directory services, starting from fundamental concepts to advanced implementation. And in the first part, we will explore the basics of directory services, including what they are, their importance to the network management, and how they are facilitating users and resource management. We will deep dive into Microsoft Directory, covering its architecture, components, and functionalities, including the users, user authentication, groups, group policies, domain controllers, domain management, forest, child parent domain controller, relationship with among the controllers, primary domain controllers, secondary domain controllers, remote site domain controllers, and we will see how we can replicate our users, our directory components, which are users, groups, and computer account from one directory repository to another repository. And of course, it depends on how big is our infrastructure. If we have only one office, centralized management, then we'll have one primary domain controller and secondary controller. So secondary domain controller for the backup and disaster recovery point of view. If we have a remote site, we have branches all over the country, then we have remote branches as well. If we have international, a global company, then we might have at our head office somewhere in our country, and we have geolocation or geological disperse and geological, you can say, uh, management point of view, or a shared pool of resources point of view. Let's say if your head office in USA and you have branches and other offices, one in Europe, one in Middle East, one in South Asian countries, then you might prefer, okay, we must have our main repository, Active Directory repository in US, and our secondary domain controller should be in the Europe. We should have our other remote domain controllers in Middle East, and their backup of their security controls should be in the South Asian countries. Why? Because the users belong to South Asian countries and Middle East might not need it in the head office. So what kind of domain controller will be? What are the federation services do we need in order to create and keeping two separate account repository, but one centralized management? And how to manage these domain controllers through federation services. So we will discuss all this inshallah in this course. So let's see all these lessons in a small introduction of each of these services. Lesson 1 is about introduction to directory services. And what we are going to learn in it, that what are the directory services? Actually, directory services are specialized databases that store information about network resources, computers, users, groups, printers, applications. They provide a systematic way to organize and manage and retrieve their information, making it easier for administrator to manage an efficient and secure network environment. Let me be quick because we made some lessons, sub-lessons for this particular lesson number 1, but let me skip some sub-lessons and move to the second lesson, which is about the overview of Microsoft Active Directory. It is about what we are going to teach in second lesson about the history and evolution of Active Directory. How did we start? How Microsoft started the Active Directory? In which version of Microsoft Server's Active Directory was introduced? The Active Directory architecture, the key features of Active Directory deployment scenarios, and future trends in Active Directory. So what actually we are going to learn in this lesson number 2 About the architecture. Architecture, what does architecture mean for Active Directory point of view? That how Active Directory actually, what are the databases, what are the components, what are the relationship among the components of Active Directory. Uh, the Active Directory deployment scenarios where we will discuss that how and what are the possible scenarios to deploy Active Directory. In a nutshell, it depends on your size of your organization. If you have one office, single office company, you don't need remote sites. You don't need to make multiple domain controllers. You don't need federation services. You just single server as a primary domain controller where you can create your users, groups, printers, applications, and in order to provide the fault tolerance, you can create secondary domain controller. That will be enough for you. But as I told you before, if you have remote branches, let's say if you have remote site, you have headquarter and you have one remote site. And this remote site has users, but again, these users are not local. And you want to make a centralized authentication mechanism. You want to control the remote site users to be created from your head office. Then what you will do, you might need, for performance point of view, you might say, okay, we have one head office and we have a remote branch. Remote branch, let's say we have 100 users and 200 users. Then what you will do, you might have primary domain controller, secondary domain controller in your head office, and you will deploy one more server, one more secondary domain controller in remote site, keeping the read-only copy of your Active Directory repository. So what will happen? All these remote users will be able to authenticate locally on the remote site, but creation, deletion, editing will be from the head office. Let's change the scope. How about if the users are different and you have multiple remote site because you have, let's say, head office somewhere in the US and you have remote branches in different part of the world. Let's say one in Middle East, one in Europe, one in South Asian countries. So what you will prefer that all the users belong to Middle East, they should be managed and authenticated remotely, but we should have a copy of it. Then you will create another child domain in the Middle East. You can say DG-Info-Corp in the US and DG-Info-Middle East, ME, in the Middle East. So what will happen? You are going to create parent-child relationship. So what will happen in this relationship? The management, creation, deletion, authentication will be locally. So you might have 50 users in your child domain, which is located in the Middle East data center and serving the local users only, but it will have the copy of all the accounts in your head office. So these are different scenarios. But again, fundamental concept of Active Directory will remain same. The architecture will remain same, but the different deployment scenario make the repository bigger and bigger. Then we will have the third lesson about the Active Directory components. There we will go deep dive. We will discuss about the architecture. These all are part of the architecture. In lesson 3, we will learn about domain controllers, the type of domain controllers, global catalog server, Active Directory sites and services, the group policies, the Active Directory users and components, how to create, how to manage, and how to optimize all of these components. Very interesting lesson. Once we reach, you will enjoy it, I'm sure. Then once your theoretical concepts are clear about the Active Directory, we will dive into the installation of Active Directory. You will have all of the students, those who are active, they will be able to install configure, and manage Microsoft Active Directory, and in which we will give you a console, and then it will be Microsoft Server, and you will be able to, we'll give you the installer. You will be able to install Microsoft Active Directory services in your console. Simple wizard, but simple visitor, sorry, the simple, it will be a simple, you can say, the step-by-step configuration guide we will provide you, and the wizard will take you screen by screen, taking the input from you, taking the name of the directory services, the type of the directory services, if you have parent-child relationship, if you want to enable some other dependent resources along with Active Directory services, let's say DNS, Exchange, this will be asked during the wizard of Active Directory. So prerequisites of the installation, step-by-step installation process, configuration of Active Directory after installation. These all, by the way, fall under ICM, install, configure, and manage. We will learn all ICM things in lesson number 4. Then from lesson 1 to 4 is all about Active Directory, Microsoft Active Directory. As I told you, this course is Microsoft implementation of LDAP and open source LDAP. From lesson 5, we will start about Open LDAP, which is open source, which will be installed in Linux operating system. We will give you a console of Reddit Linux operating system console. Then we will teach you how to install Open LDAP. Then what will happen? If Microsoft Active Directory, it is not the only directory services in the world where you can create users, groups, group policies, computers, and applications. If you don't like Microsoft Active Directory, if you don't have budget for buying the licenses, Microsoft licenses, and if you have Reddit, or if you have Linux environment, not necessarily Reddit, you might have the Ubuntu, you might have SUSE, whatever flavor of Linux you have, you can use Open LDAP, providing the same repository, same component. And then we will learn in this lesson 5, we will learn about introduction about the Open LDAP, the use cases, the comparison between Open LDAP and other directory services, Open LDAP architecture, and benefits of using Open LDAP. Very interesting. You will love it. Those who are Linux lover, they will love it. Believe me. Then we'll move into the components, just like Active Directory component. We'll discuss about the Open LDAP components. What are the directory information free? What are the entries and attributes of LDAP? What are the configuration files of Open LDAP? What are the access control list? What are the replication of Open LDAP? How to replicate the Open LDAP? So different terminologies. Microsoft says the components of Active Directory, right? And Linux is all about the files. Microsoft, because Microsoft is closed code, so they use their own proprietary databases and all, so they hide everything from the end user. They hide all the complexities. But in Linux, because Linux is for the advanced users, so you can manipulate, you can configure, you can have advanced configuration, then you can, so that's why it is file-based. Everything is configuration files, which you can manage, you can change according to your requirement. This is what is in the Open LDAP configuration files. Access control list, it is just like your security features of Microsoft version of Active Directory. Here in Open LDAP, it's access control list. And we will discuss about their application. In Microsoft, we say primary domain controller, secondary domain controller, remote site application controls, child domain, parent-child domain controllers, read-only version of Active Directories. Here in OpenLDAP, we say replication, fundamental. And if you look at the Active Directory part also, it is in the backend, it is the replication. Replication means actually having a copy of the master file. In reality, it is the replication, nothing more than this. Then we will teach you how to install OpenLDAP. What are the system requirements, the step-by-step installation. It is again the OpenLDAP ICM version of it. Step-by-step installation process, the basic configuration of all LDAP, post-installation configuration, and what are the common issues of installing and configurations belong to OpenLDAP. And then we'll have comparison between Active Directory and OpenLDAP because at that time, once you reach lesson number 8, you will be able to have full knowledge of Active Directory and full knowledge of OpenLDAP. Then we'll give a comparison, then it will be eye-opening for you. Okay, well, this is what we learned in Active Directory. Now, after this, we learn in OpenLDAP. Okay, this was the difference between them. Then you will have command on both of the directory services. Then in the last, we will study about the security features and integration with the services. Security best practices for Active Directory, OpenLDAP security features, integration with identity management system. What are the federated identity management? What are the compliance and regulatory configuration? This is what we will learn in this course, very comprehensive. Each lesson we will give 2 classes and will be enough because as I told you, this is essential series and essential scope in our mind will be enough for all these lessons. So today is actually a brief introduction about this training course, and as I told you, we will start the first lesson today. So let's go back to the first lesson of our introduction to Active Directory and the first sub lesson of what are the directory services. Okay, let's start this part. The first sub lesson. Welcome to our lesson on Active Directory services. So in this segment, we'll explore the fundamental concepts of directory services and their critical role in managing the network resources. So here, if you want to ask any question, you can write in the chat window, by the way, because some of you might be using the service, might be administrating the service, might be already expert in it. Feel free to write it. I'll give you time for asking the question at the end. So what exactly are directory services? At their core, directory services are specialized database designed to store, organize, and provide access to information about the resources within the network. So these resources can include users, computers, applications, and other devices. Think of our directory services as a digital phone book or a contact list of your organization, just like you would use a phone book to find person's contact information. So directory services allow you to locate and manage resources within your IT environment effectively. Directory services utilize a hierarchical structure, often represented as a tree-like format, where each entry corresponds to a resource, and each entry contains attributes that provide additional details about that resource. For instance, a user entry might include attributes like name, email address, and phone number. One of the key features of directory services is their ability to facilitate authentication and authorization. When a user attempts to access the network resource, the directory services verifies their identity and determine what resources they are allowed to access based on their permission. It can be any. We will discuss later about what could be the any mean. But this functionality is critical for maintaining the network's security, ensuring that the sensitive information is only available to authorized person. In summary, directory services are essential for network management, providing a centralized way to store access information about the users, resources, while others play a critical role in security and access control. What is ISMS? We will discuss in detail in our other courses. But why we are mentioning ISMS here? Because it includes the confidentiality, all these components which fall under ISMS. Actually, these all are talking about users and groups. Let's say incident and response. Incident response, again, based on who is accessing what, who is user, what means the network resource, and what can be a server, and it can be a network resource, which can be a server, workstation, printer, any network resource or an application. Integrity means that it is providing to the right people, those who are eligible, those who are authorized to access. Only these guys are allowed to access the network resources. Again, ISMS will make sure the integrity is intact. Confidentiality. Confidentiality means that the resources are for those who are authorized to access in a way that even somebody is in the middle is trying to sniff the communication should not be able to sniff. Even if they are able to sniff, it should be meaningless for them. Making the communication confidential means making useless for those who are sniffing in the middle. One of the greatest example of confidentiality is to encrypt the communication. What is communication? We are sending a username and password. If somebody is sniffing in the middle, he should not be able to see exact password. He should see the garbage. Availability, as I told you, we should have primary domain controller and secondary domain controller. So secondary domain controller, it is for making my directory services available. If primary domain controller is down, then I should keep providing the service of authentication. Because as I told you before, that if my directory services are down, all three kind of users will not be able to log into the system. Hence, the whole disaster is expected. Complete catastrophic disaster will happen. So I should make sure that secondary domain controller is available. It again fall under ISMS, which is called availability. Risk management, one of the key component of ISMS, is about making sure the internal resources are properly given to authorized users only. If not, then internal system on risk. We will study about deep dive, but I just want to correlate what we have discussed directly controlled in ISMS. Again, let's move forward and see what are the controls. Control means if we have a risk, then how we are mitigating the risk. We are mitigating the risk through providing the security controls. We have username and password, and I'm trying to log into my system. Somebody is sniffing is not the only way where the users are trying to guess or trying to sniff my username password. There are so many ways the username and password can be compromised. There's so many ways. Guessing, using the non-complex password, using the simple password, writing the password on the paper and keeping the paper under my keyboard, or telling it over the phone so somebody is listening it. There's so many ways my username and password will be compromised. So this is a risk. So how to mitigate the risk? Through control. What is the control? Control is making multi-factor authentication. What it is a part of Active Directory. We'll discuss it later. Then compliance. Let's say to mitigate this risk, we have providing the controls. We should audit that this control is properly performed, implemented, and managed. Compliance audit will make sure, yes, this is correct, and my risk has been mitigated. Training the users, asking users to use complex password. Don't share it with anybody. This is part of my training program. And we have to repeat this cycle of ISMS for the continual improvement. Okay, guys, we are done about our first sub lesson.